Well, hello and welcome to the Restless Saga Workshop YouTube channel. And this week we're talking about the Land Rover Series 3 and Fairey Free Wheeling Hubs. This specifically is a fitting guide or fitting instructions, and it's mostly based on the Fairey guide themselves. So without any further ado, let's get stuck into the freewheeling hubs and show you how to fit them. Okie doke, so starting off going through this fitting guide by seeing what you get in the box. Now, I bought my hubs, and obviously this is just one side. I bought my hubs off eBay. There's a lot of pairs hanging around at the minute, and the reason I waited as long as I did was to get ones with fairly unmarked outer cups. These get bashed off-road because they do sit quite prominent on the outboard of the wheel and can get caught on rocks and other bits and pieces when you're off-roading. These ones are quite unmarked, both sides, which is great. So I've set this up in the order of assembly. All right, I'm going to take you through all the bits and bobs. I'd strongly recommend getting one of these kits. I think it's about £30, and it was from LROE, or Land Rover Optional Equipment. Rob Mod, who you'll see around the Facebook groups, is the proprietor of this, and he supplies great stuff. It always fits, and his delivery was super quick, even around the Christmas COVID period. So strongly recommend these. He's also the only guy who's reproducing the correct retaining strips, so that's been good. For so long people have been unable to service their Fairey Free Wheeling Hubs, and this guy has just revolutionized it. In his kit you get O-rings, you get the nice screws, the big O-ring around the outside, and gaskets, the whole works. So this is the outer flange, and that's going to replace the solid flange that you've probably taken off. This is obviously the 24 spline version. There's 24 splines in the inside of that inner ring, and the spar locks ring is already in there, and that is the only real difference between this and the 10 spline, other than the fact that there's 10 splines. There is a little bearing in the back here, that bronzy ring, and I'll talk about that in a wee minute. This needs lubricated with Rockall, and I have a little pot of that in the bench. So if you get them like this, it's worthwhile just popping out that snap ring, taking the inner spline bit out, smearing Rockall around the outside face between the inner bit and the bronze ring, and then putting the snap ring back in again, because that's the only lubrication that's carrying the outer end of the shaft. Okay, you also need the Rockall. In fact, I'll go and get it off the bench. I'll show you this again in a minute. This is it here. It's really expensive, about £7 for this tiny wee pot, but it's used for Fairey Overdrives as well, so that's why I have it, happily. You also put your Rockall around the outside of these splines and the inside of those splines, around the plastic face here as well, and on these little cam prominences as well. Keep everything nice and lubricated. Okay, so that is the hub face. That's a little retaining ring that goes in the inside on the outer end of your shaft nut. Now, for some reason that's beyond me, the late 88 inches and the 109 front axles and rears, I think, in the 109s, have this daft round nut. Why it couldn't be a hex face one is beyond me. So you do need a special tool to fit into these. Some guys have seen grind down a socket, but I'm going to get my hands on the special tool as well. I think HNJ Engineering are going to put those into production, which is great. So that's weird and annoying. Little roll pin goes in here to lock it. This slides in and out as you turn the cams, push the spline faces in and out, and that is what locks or unlocks your hubs. Outer cup retaining ring slides round here, and that took a little bit of working out. It slides into that groove, goes round this groove, and then locks with a little screw. And there's no ring that's for the screw as well. I'm going to change this O-ring as well and put a little bit of smear around this and around that, plus on a Rockall. So a little bit of work to be done before you even fit these onto the vehicle, but all very worthwhile, and worthwhile doing it properly. I just wonder, is that why Fairey hubs get a bit of a bad name on the forums from all the wise people? So let's get over to getting them fitted, as I'm sure that's all what you came here to see. Okay, just to show you where I'm going to put the Rockall on this, I've popped the middle bit out, this splined bit. I'm going to smear Rockall around here, Rockall around the inside of this bronzy bit, and then put the snap ring back on. Looks like there hasn't been a whole lot of lubrication going on in this anyway from the wear pattern in that, but that's okay. These were quite low miles whenever I got them, hence they're in good nick. So let's get some lubrication in these and make them nice and reliable. Okie doke, so this is what you'll be starting out with whenever you strip off your old fixed flanges that sit here. You'll come down to this, and obviously this is the 24 spline shaft. There's also the 10 spline shaft, which varies ever so slightly in that it has a felt washer, whereas the 24 doesn't. This felt washer just nearly screws on and the shaft is slightly different shape. But I'm going to take you through the 24, but the 10 doesn't really vary very much differently. So what you want to do is clean up this gasket face here, degrease it. I use white spirit, and then I'm going to use some gasket sealant, and the gasket I have just sitting just off camera, which is here. Now this is a used one, not a brand new one, because I've just stripped the hub back off because I wanted to do something. So I'm going to get a nice new gasket, throw that away, and then this is going to sit on there. Okay, now as you can see, I've already had this on and off, as I said, and the reason I took it on and off was to put some Rockall on this. Now Rockall MTS 1000 is what is advocated in the Fairey fitting guide, and that dark grey graphite-y stuff is the Rockall, and it just sits on the inside of this bronze bearing, because actually there's no lubrication in there, which I didn't realise the first time I fitted it, and that all sounded a bit dry. I'll take you over and show you the Rockall. This tiny little tub here is the Rockall. Now I actually had some from building my Fairey Overdrive, so it must be a Fairey thing. And it's really expensive. I think it's about £7 for a little tub of that stuff, which is extraordinary whenever a tub of actual lithium grease is about £4. But I think it's got really good adherence abilities and a very high temperature tolerance and all those good things. So you want to take this little snap ring off and smear it around the outside of the carrier. I'll show you this center bit here, as you can see, rotates, and you can just see the Rockall around the inside there as well. So I've smeared it all over the outside of this carrier, the inside of this bronzy type bearing, and put the snap ring back on, and it's much smoother and it doesn't sound like metal on metal. I also smear the Rockall around the inside of these splines and the outside of those splines down in there, both sides, because that is where the sliding gear is going to go that I showed you earlier. And it's sitting here just inside the cup, and you can see the Rockall smeared around all those splines, both inside and outside, just to make sure it doesn't freeze up on you. And you also put it on the little cams which are down in there, which I showed you earlier too. So that's what I'm going to do. So next step, gasket on this, get it bolted on, and I'll catch you up once that's done. Okie doke, so this is the main sort of flange plate on. I've only got the 2 bolts on here. I've just used brand new bolts. They're quite cheap, and you fit them with these little star washers which are anti-shake, presumably because you don't want the flange falling off. You can see the gasket sticking out there, quite sparing with the blue this time. Now these nuts, because it's an alloy casting, you want to sort of work across the way, so opposites, and then opposites, and then opposites, and those are done up to 28 pounds-feet. So you will need a torque wrench for this job if you're going to do it properly. And once that's on, I'm going to put a little smear of grease around that O-ring, which I've replaced from that kit I showed you earlier. And that should be pretty much it, ready to slide the sliding bit on. I'm sure there's a proper name for that. The splined slidey bit that's sprung, and the cap, and then I'll show you how to put the retaining ring on, and that's pretty much it. It's actually not too bad. So next step. Alrighty, so the next step was this little spacer ring which presses against the Sparrowlocks ring, and here is a mashed up Sparrowlocks ring I had earlier, and that presses against that, slides in there, should slide in there, there we go. And then this funny shaped nut that we all know and love goes on here, and that gets tightened up to between 10 and 15 pounds-feet, which actually is not that much. So I'm going to get that tightened up and show you the next step. And just to secure this nut, make sure it doesn't come flying off, you want to tap the little roll pin through there. I think ordinarily there'd be a split pin, but presumably they don't want anything sitting outside the circumference of the circular nut because of the sliding part of the hub. So I'm just going to tap this in here and move on to the next bit. Pretty much getting towards completion here. So you put the plastic end of the slidey bit, this whole assembly here, smear it all with rock all over those cam covers, or the cam sort of sticky out bits, and pop that in there and give it a little bit of a rotation so that it sits down within the cover. Easier said than done. There we go. Right, it's in. So there's 3 master splines, so those ones, the little roll pins, 1, 2, 3. They're going to line up with the slightly larger holes here, and then you pop that on, and then it's ready to slide the little plastic retaining strip here. So it's going to be a two-handed operation here to try and get this on, but I'll show you once it's on. And there we have the outer cover on. Now this plastic retaining ring, I don't have my tripod set up just with me, but the plastic retaining ring slides into a little groove and goes the whole way around. So it slides in a groove within the outer cup into a groove on the inner hub face, and that just means that's not coming off. Okay, and I put a little smear of grease on just to help it on its way and make it easier to remove in future. So I'm just going to put the little tapered screw in, and that is pretty much the end of the tutorial. Very straightforward and easy. Bob's your uncle, screws in. Now, that's the whole Fairey Free Wheeling Hub assembly on. As you can see over there, I have a crowbar in the other hub just to lock it, and she's in 4-wheel drive as well. So at the minute, that spins nice and freely, all very happy, no grinding noises. So if I rotate that into 4x4, which I'm hoping to do, there we go. That's how it's locked. There's not any turning, which is about right. Okay, so I cannot turn that because she's in 4-wheel drive. The back wheels are locked because the handbrake's on, and that wheel's locked, so this wheel I'm trying to turn the engine with, which obviously I'm not going to be able to do. So back into 4x2, and it spins freely. 4x4, locked. How cool is that? I'm absolutely delighted with these. Yes, I know they're controversial. I'm going to cover that in another video, but I really thought a fitting video would be good for those of you who are trying to rely on the old scanned copies floating around the internet of the original Fairey fitting instructions. Well, I really hope you found that useful. I think it was quite a comprehensive but quite succinct coverage of how to fit Fairey Free Wheeling Hubs to your Land Rover. If you have any questions, please fire them in the comments or reply to them all. And give me the thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below. It would be very much appreciated as well. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, the whole works, and I try my best to be active across all the channels. So until next time, cheerio.